Magandang araw sa inyo lahat at ngayon ang guest natin ay yung organizer ng Tindig Pilipinas, si Mr. Kiko Dee. Welcome to the show, Kiko.
Hi, good morning Chris. Good morning sa lahat ng mga nanonood po ngayon.
Kiko, alam mo, no, siguro bago tayo mag-umpisa kasi marami tayong pag-uusapan sa mga nangyayaring mga bagay sa buong Pilipinas, including the rallies, the revelations, the Senate hearing and everything. But how did you get involved with this? You're fairly young and parang I heard your name. You're the good Kiko na narinig ko. And nagulat na lang ako parang okay, who's Kiko Dee? Okay. So how did it all get started for you?
Well, like we were talking about, I guess, a little bit earlier, no? So, I became active in the Ninoy Aquino Foundation. So, it's the family foundation that's tasked with preserving the legacy of Ninoy, Cory, and then after si Tito Noy passed away, Tito Noy as well, no? At first, I thought the work that I would do is really just more historical and I wouldn't be that involved in the day-to-day of politics. But in early 2024, the sort of charter change campaign was launched. And if you remember, like the ad nung panahon yun was in EDSA puwera daw tayo ng EDSA, diba? So they really put EDSA as like the antagonist of charter change. So syempre, we were organizing the anniversary for EDSA nung 2024 at the time. We had to clap back at that, diba? So we started also advocating against charter change, and awa ng Diyos, we were able to block that very like clandestine effort to change the constitution. And then since then, the groups that we were involved there, I got involved with Tindig Pilipinas, which was a group that was formed nung 2017 during the height of the Dutertes killings. And then that group was still together when in November of last year, si VP Sara had her episode na calling for the assassination of ganito ganyan. And that group sort of was already monitoring the situation quite closely. And then we decided, okay, I think this is definitely an impeachable offense. We came together, filed the impeachment, and from there, yun, tuloy-tuloy na. Like, we were doing impeachment. I helped out in the 2025 elections for Mamamayang Liberal, since I really believed in now Kong Laila de Lima, and then back to impeachment, and then now with the corruption stuff. So it's been dire-diretso lang.
Kumbaga parang one after the other yung mga pinaglalaban nyo na umabot kayo sa punto na parang naging regular na trabaho mo na ito ngayon.
Yeah, oo nga eh. Kasi parang so technically so ang full-time ko dapat ay executive director ako ng foundation. I teach part-time sa UP. But I think yung mga activismo or whatever that occupies most of my time now, diba?
So ngayon parang mukhang lumalabas nga aktivista ka na nga ngayon eh.
I get.
Where do you teach?
So I'm a part-time lecturer sa UP Diliman.
Ayun, I figured. So ikaw yung nagtuturo sa mga aktivista doon.
Oh yeah, pero yung tinuturo sa kanila ay statistics. So yung mga pinagkakagawa nila. Or I mean statistics for the social sciences. So
right.
Like the formal statistics. Pero yung pinagkakagawa nila, hindi nila yung napudot sa akin.
Pero alam mo, nung una kita napansin, yun nga, yung sa Senate. Right. That very famous na thumbs down sa mga senador natin. Anong tingin mo ngayon? That was the 19th Congress, isn't it?
No.
Was that the 20th Congress ba?
That was in August So that's the new Congress na. Kasi,
was it the new Congress?
It's the new Congress na. Kasi I remember that si Marcoleta gave his, I think, maiden speech, no? Which was opposing the impeachment complaint. And then after that, nagkabotohan on his motion to dismiss. Naging tape. Archived.
Yes, okay. So from that point, sige, unang pag-usapan natin nga itong impeachment na hindi na nga napag-uusapan eh.
Right.
Tingin mo may pag-asa pa ba to? Where we're at right now, given the fact na may motion for reconsideration, tapos the Supreme Court, obviously mukhang they're sitting on this.
Right. So I think, honestly, because of the flood control scandal, kahit ako I'm not up to date on the progress of the motions for reconsideration sa Supreme Court. But I think, it's a very niche reference, pero sa akin parang Schrodinger's impeachment tong nangyari eh. Kasi hindi mo alam kung patay siya o buhay siya. Since some people argue na, okay, archived, kung sakaling magbago yung decision ng Supreme Court, pwede naman siyang buhayin. May ibang nag-argue naman na, well, kung ang turing nila sa ginawa ng House of Representatives ay archived means dismissed, hindi ba't ibig sabihin dismissed na tong current impeachment na rin? So we don't even know the current status. And ako just running through scenarios in my head, and di naman ako expert, di ako abogado, no? Pero kung hindi tayo sigurado kung buhay siya at patay siya, pag dumating na nga yung February and wala pang decision yung Supreme Court, sasabihin ba ng kampo ni Sara Duterte ay buhay pa naman tong current impeachment, baka like let's give this due course before filing a new one. So ako, it's such a what the Supreme Court did was really such a, it threw such a wrench into all of our understandings of impeachment.
Yeah.
So medyo syempre there's all the political machinations of the Senate, of Vice President Duterte, of Malacanang even, pero the real, I think the damage that was done to the accountability mechanism, that really needs to be accounted for as well. And that's the Supreme Court who's responsible for that.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate, ano? And I know that even some retired Supreme Court justices were saying na yung ginawa ng ating Supreme Court ngayon is tantamount to an amendment.
Right.
Or an addition rather than an interpretation.
Yeah, kasi they're giving new requirements to what can be raised as impeachment. And yung nakakatakot nga is merong yung isang condition in the Leonen decision said basically, I forget kung pang ilan siya, yung you cannot be impeached for something that you didn't do while you're in the office you occupy. So parang the idea, kasi parang since we were preparing for impeachment, diba? I was asking, okay, what's going on dito sa impeachment? And then one classic case kasi sa impeachment is, okay, paano kung meron kang presidente? Bago siya maging presidente, he had some other position of authority. While using that position, he sold state secrets or whatever. Pag nalaman natin yan habang presidente siya, ibig sabihin hindi natin siya pwedeng impeach. Parang malabo yun, di ba? So, yun. Like all of these new policies, I think, even regardless of whether we're gonna use it for Sara Duterte or, I don't know, if because of everything coming out right now, if we use it on, say, President Marcos or whoever else, parang regardless of who we use it on, we really need to look at whether these new policies are aligned with what the 87 Constitution was intended, no? So, yun, I hope the motions for reconsideration are given due course sa lalong madaling panahon. Sana hindi to umabot ng February.
Ayun nga ang inaalala ko na baka nga antayin na nga nila hanggang February or hindi ko lang kung pwede ba nilang hindi sagutin yung motion for reconsideration o baka kailangan ba talaga. Yun ang hindi ko alam eh.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that, okay, even if they don't answer it, I'm hoping that we can still proceed with a fresh impeachment in February.
Mm-hmm.
Kasi ang takot ko lang talaga ay, okay, kung nakabinbin siya doon sa Supreme Court, I suspect the argument of the lawyers of Vice President Duterte will be, yun, parang there's still a pending impeachment. Kahit na inargue nila na dismiss siya, then they can just flip around and say there's a pending motion for reconsideration. Wag muna nating, like, there can only be one impeachment at a time or something. Again, not a lawyer, so I'm not an expert. Pero medyo, alam niyo, Chris, parang like, my sister and I both went to UP, di ba? Parang meron kaming, we both developed this sort of, parang phobia na we both, it's not scientific, but we call it bureaucratic anxiety. Na parang like sa dami ng mga proseso, kahit na sa tingin ko ginawa ko lahat ng tama, they can still pull something out na this because it interacts with this way, kayo pa rin yung mali, right? So ako parang kinakabahan ako with impeachment right now.
You know, I agree with that, yung bureaucratic anxiety. Totoo yan. Kasi nga napansin ko kahit na anong government office. And yun ang isang kailangan natin ayusin yung red tape. Because napansin ko, like anything I apply in government or anything I submit, palaging may kulang.
Right.
Kahit na ba, and then, you know, at one point, ganito ka, mundane yung kulang. Sinabi sa akin, sir, at sinabit ko na lahat. Sir, yung isang sinabit mo, dapat A4. Paper size naka 8.5 by 11 kaya hindi namin pwedeng tanggapin. And I'm like, teka, yan parang bank certificate natin. Sabi ko, yun yung binigay ng bangko, alam naman nila this is for this. Tapos wala tayong magagawa, sir, kailangan ka bumalik. I'm like, wow, talaga? Pati yun? Down to the paper size.
It's really everything is held against you. Diba?
Yes, so which is where the problem lies, I think, with the government. They look for so many reasons to hinder progress.
Right.
Which is what opens it up for corruption.
Right. And if I'm being fair, kasi I was full-time in UP for a few years, diba? So government din naman yun. The sense I get is parang let's say you try to solve, may gusot and you try to solve something. Ang takot mo kasi is, okay, since ako yung nagpasya nito, kung mali yung interpretation ko, ako yung mananagot, diba? So your fear is always, okay, you're always looking for what is the president? And then if no president exists, takot ka na you're the ones, okay, let's do it this way. parang few people, like in the bureaucracy, few people are willing to step up to sort of make that judgment call, diba? And that just compounds to the inefficiency.
Right.
So nakakaano, it's I hope I don't know how to fix that. But yeah, it's sad. And these are all well-meaning people. Like I've worked with them. I love a lot of the people I work with sa UP. Pero ganun there's that fear na legitimate din. Kasi malay mo kung career mo to, kung ano mangyayari sa'yo kung may isang mainis sa'yo.
Pero alam mo, na-realize ko, but UP is very different, I think, from the rest of majority of the government. There are certain government agencies naman na wala akong nakikita masyadong parang wala akong nakitang problema o mukhang maayos yung trabaho. May ilan naman dyan. Hindi ko sinasabi, hindi ko nilalahat.
Right.
Pero may mga ilan naman dyan that are just corrupt to the core. DPWH is certainly one of them. And dun nga yung mga problema natin ngayon, what we're talking about, where they have a big chunk of the budget, and yet wala ka nakikitang progress, which is why we're at this situation we're at today. Nung nangyari tong flood control, then you saw all the controversy and the issue. What was going through your mind at that point? And how did we get to that rally that you guys organized in last September?
So I think the flood control intersects with impeachment in a very physical way, no? Kasi the day the Leonen decision came out, yung Tindig and a bunch of individuals associated with Tindig, we wanted to file a motion to intervene. Kasi we were the complainants, and then yung balita nga is, okay, i-dismiss yung impeachment because of some procedural mistake. Ang tingin ko, parang unfair naman yun sa complainants na wala naman kaming ginawang mali, pero hindi bibigyan ng due course yung complaint namin. So we wanted to intervene in the case that was pending in the Supreme Court. So that was July 25. Bumabaha nung day na yun, diba? So we went to I remember it was me and then one of the other parang secretariat of Tindig. We drove after compiling all of the legal documents, which again, bureaucracy, parang sobrang dosenang kopya ng motion to intervene yung pinrint namin. But like after assembling everything that morning, we were there siguro 11 a.m., 12 noon. And then yun, bahang-baha yung Padre Faura. Tumawid ako, like, I had to wade through flooded waters to get to the Supreme Court. Kasi bumaba kami sa DOJ instead of the Supreme Court kasi first time ko mag-file sa Supreme Court, malay ko ba. And then yun, so parang I had to wade through flooded waters, and then coming home, I had to get the leptospirosis medicine. So parang very, ako, parang hindi pa flood control, like impeachment pa yung focus ko nun. Pero sobrang lala yung flooding nung time na yun. And the frustrating thing was, just a few weeks later, kasi that was off the heels of really bad rain, diba?
Yes.
Yung July 25, off the heels of really bad rain. A few weeks later, we were back in the Supreme Court. I don't even remember why anymore. Sobrang konting ulan lang din, ganong same level of baha, diba? So the flood control, it's so visceral to it. And ako parang I come from a very privileged background. It's not something I have to deal with often. Pero you can imagine na parang people have to deal with that every day para makapagtrabaho, para makapag-aral. It's so easy to understand why people are angry, and then compound that with all of the parang kinall out yung mga kamag-anak ng mga kontratista, ng mga politiko na living it up on social media. So you compound that everyday hardship na yun, in a real sense you're putting your life on the line kasi parang you can get sick from from flooded waters. And then combine that with people living it up, it's no surprise na sobrang galit yung mga tao, diba?
And it's interesting how it all happened. Parang it seems to me like, and I'm not religious in any sense, pero parang God is parang intervening in a way. Kasi bago nangyari itong tuloy-tuloy na pag-tag-ulan, di ba tuloy-tuloy ito since July, o baka June pa nga, it was just raining every single day. And I mean, this is one of the first few days na walang rain, and yet this is rare.
Right.
Di ba? So it was just continuous rain throughout the entire Philippines. On top of the fact that then, the other factor was the government, kasi BBM did announce it in SONA.
Right.
He didn't have to. He didn't have to say, mahiya naman kayong lahat. He did. And then, may follow-up pa siya. Nag-follow up siya with the press con to show the names of the 15 top contractors that got parang 20 to 30% of majority of the projects. What is your read on this na President BBM did that? Did he have to Does he not have to? And yet now, with the revelations of Zaldico, and I'll talk about that later. We can talk about that. Yung na ini-implicate niya ngayon si BBM on this one. What was your read on the first part where BBM decided to make this his parang advocacy in a way? Tinutukan niya, creating the ICI and all of that.
Well, so again, like just timeline-wise, I'm recalling that this is the SONA was just a few days after July 25, after the decision of the court, diba? But just recalling, my initial take on Mahiya naman kayo was it is the correction of the SONA of the previous year. Kasi diba pinagmalaki niya yung flood control nung 2024.
Yes, you're
only
right.
For so many places in the country to be flooded, diba? And then so I guess parang dala-dala niya yung kahihiyan na yun, wanted to correct it in the SONA, so he called out the flood control scandals. And total, makes sense. We went through a really bad round of flooding in the days and weeks immediately prior, diba? So I feel like he thought that. My honest take now is I think he thought it would be a good applause line in his SONA. He thought that, okay, I'll set up this website and then that'll be that. But it wasn't nearly enough, diba? And so he had to scramble together to put the ICI together. And then didn't even consider, parang initially the plan for the ICI wasn't to be public, which to me doesn't make sense. Kasi parang that's what we couldn't rely on the House, we couldn't rely on the Senate. What else would we be able to rely on if the ICI wouldn't live stream its hearings? And then siguro it was just a few weeks ago na parang na-approve yung budget for the ICI. So parang all of this seems like parang cobbled together, crossing the bridge while like you're building the bridge while you cross it, diba? Itong ginagawa niya. So I don't think it seems to me he didn't really have a sense of how deep the corruption issue cuts for people. Now when he brings it up, it wouldn't just end a few days or a few weeks after the SONA. It's really something that people held on to and want to see like concrete action on.
Parang lumalabas from how you sound, you're not very hopeful or with the ICI and what they're meant to do. Is that tama ba yung read ko dito or ano yan?
I'm conflicted about the ICI because I believe very much in Secretary Babe Singson. Right?
Okay.
Syempre, came from the Pinoy administration, and everyone I've talked, I haven't had a chance to speak with him personally, but everyone I've talked to in his circle vouches so much for his credibility. So the fact that he's there suggests to me that he sees that something can come out of the activity, out of what the ICI is doing. But if something does come out of what the ICI is doing, it's going to happen, I think, despite the best efforts, pero despite the inability to follow through of the administration. No? So parang they fell butt backwards into appointing Secretary Babes in there, which I think gives it a lot of credibility and gives me some hope that stuff will come out. But at the same time, it's clear that the ICI wasn't Plan A. Is I think what's clear to me. So hopefully and I think segueing into the Zaldico allegations. I mean, I think the content of the allegations aside, the fact that you have someone implicating the president, it means to me that what the progressive legislators who are pushing for a truly independent ICI empowered by Congress through legislation, I think that's the right way to go now. No? So that way the president can recuse himself from the flood control investigations. And we can figure out what's really going on as far as what si Zaldico is saying.
Right. Okay. So that's why you believe siguro nga that. But they did, diba? They did create the parang ICP ba yun? Or parang it's a People's Commission for Infrastructure or something like that, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure if it was actually formed, but I remember parang pinasa na yung sa Senate version nun. Or was that a different one?
So I'll have to follow up. I'll have to look into it then. No? But I know that in the Senate version, the bill was filed by Senate President Soto. I don't think he was Senate President at the time it was filed, but he filed it. And then in the House, there are several authors, but syempre, since I worked a lot with MLC, Kong Laila de Lima is the one I recall the most. I think the House version, was approved by the committee. And I forget what the appropriate committee was, but I think has made it out of the committee level. So there's some progress there. But I think it hasn't been certified urgent by the president. And I think one way to establish that parang that he's for transparency is give due course to I mean, again, as problematic as the content might be, it's there. No, the accusation is there. Give it due course. Don't protect yourself. Right? Don't say. I think I won't dignify it is not the right way to go about it. It's just give it if you're sure that nothing happened. Give it due course. Make sure that Zaldico comes home safely. Parang if he's worried about assassination, do what you can as the president of the Philippines to guarantee his safety. Let him testify, and then whatever happens will happen, diba? But you as president, since you're mentioned, that's the same way that Mayor Magalong was, I think, rightly taken out of the ICI because he has projects linked to the Discayas in Baguio.
Yes.
President Marcos also needs to recuse himself, given that there's an accusation made against him now. So. Yeah, I think so. My hope for the ICI is that the congressional version is what gets established, so it has like some genuine independence.
Right. That actually makes a lot of sense. Ngayon, when it comes to the flood control issue, it seems that sobrang lalim at lawak nung korupsyon. Ang daming damay. Para sa akin kasi ang siguro inaalala ng taong bayan, saan pa tayo aasa?
Right.
Nadamay ang Kongreso, nadamay ang Senado, nadamay ang DPWH, nadamay ang COA, nadamay ang DBM, nadamay ang ilang executive departments. And if you look at it, kahit na nga, I mean, if beyond the flood control, even the judicial system is also broken,
Right.
or corrupted in a way. Saan pa tayo aasa from this point on?
So I think when we see corruption of this massive scale, we have two models in our relatively recent history, diba? The first model is EDSA Dos, right? So you had ERAP, and then he was removed by a popular revolution and also a withdrawal of support by the military. And I think what happened afterwards was we had President Arroyo assume office, and I think the consensus naman is she was a more corrupt president than President Estrada, right? And on top of that, this is debatable, no? But my views, having studied political science for a while, is I feel like the proper response talaga to corruption is the electoral process, right?
Yeah.
So when you have a corrupt politician, you need to, I mean, aside from all of the legal remedies which are necessary,
Yes.
right? But again, even those legal remedies, they depend on the sitting government's ability to prosecute properly, diba? To have their eye on the ball in the case, to make sure that they don't give concessions to political allies, to push it forward, right? So I think that the second model, then, is what we saw in 2010. We had a very corrupt administration in Gloria Arroyo, and notwithstanding, there were attempts to unseat her extra-constitutionally. But which in a way is, I might even say in that time, those methods of unseating her might have been justified since she not only was corrupt, but she also messed around with the elections, about the Hello Garci scandal. But what ended up ultimately rebuking her was in 2010, there was an election, and the candidate who was the most credible critic of President Arroyo, not nagbubuhat ng sariling bangko, but at the time the most credible critic of President Arroyo was elected, and that was the rebuke to corruption, right? So I think we have these two models. There's the popular uprising model, which I think if we go by what happened in EDSA Dos, who will benefit but the current sitting vice president. And we saw at the time of EDSA Dos, President Arroyo at the time, although I think may haka-haka na that she was doing some silly things in DSWD, if I remember right. But relatively unknown entity, got in power, was corrupt, right? So ngayon, we have Vice President Sara Duterte, definitely not an unknown entity.
Yes.
Right? So the EDSA Dos direction, parang that's what we're gonna have to reckon with, right? So my model, the other model we have is we defeat this corruption electorally. If you look at President Marcos now, it's the most unpopular administration since President Arroyo. I'm pretty sure that when we enter into the election, that side has lost its credibility. It's not going to be able to win in the election. And then the question becomes, who is the best alternative to President Marcos? And I think those of us in the democratic opposition, I think what I'd want to see is we make our best case that we are the best alternative.
Yes.
Not the Duterte camp that propped Marcos up in the first place in 2022.
Right.
And figured out all of the modus for DPWH corruption when when Digong Duterte was in office, right? The budget for flood control started inflating in 2021, right? So if we can make the case that neither of these are credible, are credible alternatives, then that I think is our best chance at turning this around. And then we can use the powers of government to put the right people in place to make sure that consequences are meted out as far as corruption is concerned.
Alam mo kasi nakikita kong problema dito, like with regards to the government and the checks and balances of the government, it failed to work nung panahon ni Digong.
Yeah.
Di ba? The ombudsman, DOJ. I mean, they were weaponized rather than, and they were used to shield the corrupt, which I think, if correct me if I'm wrong, but ang dating sa akin is yun yung nagpalala ng corruption at yung impunity. Dahil dun sa ginawa nilang pagtatanggal ng transparency, na accountability, and the president that time refusing to answer any questions, and coming up with a lot of propaganda and a lot of fake news, fake everything lumalabas dun eh. And the corruption itself started, I believe, to really grow when they started to borrow a lot of money. And in 2020, nag-umpisa yung malalaking borrowing. It was already big in 2017, 2018, 2019 started to get big. And in 2020, it ballooned.
Kasi he had an excuse to
Yeah,
borrow,
he had an
diba?
excuse. And ang palagi niyang excuse was, wala ng pera ang Pilipinas. And he kept repeating that line, wala ng pera, to justify this ballooning of our debt, which is what caused all of the prices to now balloon as well. Ang mahal na ng presyo ng bilihin ngayon. Ang nakikita kong siguro yung nararamdaman ng taong bayan na sinasabong unpopular si BBM ay dahil sa ginawa niyang pag-e-expose ng nangyayaring korupsyon. Although I'm not saying he's not part of it, what I'm saying is by putting the issue of flood control in the forefront is what now is people are upset with. And I think there's a parang it's almost a disconnect where I think I'm pissed at this government, but at the same time, wait a minute, this is the government that actually is exposing it compared to the previous government which hid it. He could have kept it in the low. But now I'm actually glad we're doing these investigations. Although I don't have a lot of faith in the ICI. Much same as you. Narinig ko si Chairman Andres Reyes ba yun? I think he is not a person that I have a lot of confidence in with the way he answers.
Duterte appointee.
At saka yung parang ang tamlay niya, hindi ako na-inspire sa kanya eh. Wala talaga. Kaya I'm like, do you even know what you're doing?
And it's interesting kasi even then, like, I think you had that of Justice Reyes, and then si E.S. Bersamin also. I remember like when you see some good actions, like si Secretary now Ombudsman Rimulya said, okay, we're going to allow people to we're gonna open up the SALNs again, and then biglang si E.S. Bersamin was like, wait, hinay-hinay lang, diba? So parang the government itself is like hindi nagkakasundo na are we really all together in this direction on anti-corruption. But I think Chris, one thing, kasi when I say that the Marcos administration is unpopular, I think that predates the corruption eh. Kasi yung pagtaas lang ng bilihin, we already saw like record high self-rated poverty, I think Q3 last year. I remember kasi my grandfather on my dad's side is the founder of like Assisi Development Foundation. He's always keeping an eye on the poverty statistics of SWS. And then nahiya ako since I'm the one who teaches like statistics for the social sciences. Pero siya yung nakapansin na, we hit 60% self-rated poverty in Q3 of 2024. And ako parang, that's, I mean, it's always embarrassingly high, but that's historically embarrassingly high, right? But like last time we were there was panahon pa ni GMA, diba? So I think parang the government really sits on shaky in terms of public support, shaky ground. Bukod sa on top of the corruption issue, which I think at first he was able to regain some momentum that he lost in the midterm. But given the slowness of the investigations. Yun, parang medyo naiinip yung mga tao, diba? And so I think what happened was he had I have to review the statistics, but I think he had 2 quarters where his approval rating was negative sa Pulse Asia, if I'm not mistaken. Nakabawi siya nung panahon ng immediately after the midterm, nakabawi siya. But I think the last poll it's not the lowest that it's been, but it's gone back into the negative. Right? I think. I have to review that. So I think, so we're in a situation that he is, I think the parallel is really, he is like President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo in the period leading up to 2010, except I don't know if President Arroyo would be happy with that comparison. But yun, in that situation, in 2010, it was a contest of who is the best alternative to Marcos.
Yes.
Right? And the troubling thing is, the President, si VP Sara Duterte, in terms of corruption, I think most people, I think, will believe not really a credible alternative. But what makes her credible is that, well, legit na ayokong si Bongbong, right? You can't be more, I mean, aside from it being impeachable, you can't be more credible in saying you don't like the president.
Yeah.
Than by saying na I contracted an assassin to do this or do that, right? So parang okay, people see na okay, legit galit siya kay President Marcos, diba? So I think that's the thing we're running up against, right? I don't think the Duterte camp, and I might be wrong here, I don't think the Duterte camp have figured out yet how to be credible in terms of I will solve corruption. I think they've evaded a lot of they've evaded a lot of the flack, and that's to the credit of their communications or whatever. No, they've evaded a lot of the flack, but I don't think they're at a space yet where people think na siya yung magsosolusyon ng problem na yan. So I think we have a real opportunity to present ourselves na yun, we've been consistent, right? Parang ako nga nung like 2010 it was kung walang korap walang mahirap, and then 2022 it was parang angat gobyernong tapat angat buhay lahat, which is kind of the same way to say kung walang korap walang mahirap, diba? So again, this is like our we have a chance to really make a case for ourselves now, and I hope that's something that everyone is conscious of, na beyond the arithmetic na I need to get this person on my side, this person on my side. There's also an issue of credibility that we need to establish, and yun, so that's something that we need to figure out how to balance.
Sorry, sinasabi mo ba that you need to establish credibility with the terms of the opposition?
The credibility that we're serious about corruption. That while we care about the election, we're serious about the corruption. While we care about the election, we're not gonna ally with ganito ganyan.
Yes.
Just for the sake of electoral points, because yun, our commitment to fighting corruption comes first. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's, and again, we were talking about relatives, diba? I'm also si Lolo Paul Aquino, who's the father of Tito Bam, right? He's and I forget if he was the one who said this, but like I remember I heard this first in 2010 when we were campaigning for Tito Noy. The saying that politics is addition, right? So definitely I'm aware na yun, we need to bring people in as much as possible. But I think what we see, I think at the same time, you need to balance that interest. Bring as many people as in, don't alienate as many people as possible. You need to balance that interest with, we need to be credible as far as what we're saying is concerned. And if you bring certain people in, that will lose you some credibility.
Okay.
And there's some poli-sci stuff I can throw at you to support that. But I will say it's not the mainstream theory.
Okay.
Yung mainstream pa rin is politics is addition. So
right.
I'm kind of swimming upstream with that argument.
Pero at the same time, when you mentioned that, it sounds to me naman kasi na parang, teka lang, you're saying na you need to build credibility, pero the current alternative to the president right now, the vice president, has no credibility. I don't know if it's just my echo chamber, pero napansin ko talaga, ang mga tao lang na naniniwala ay yung mga supporters lang ng mga Duterte. That's about it. But if you look at the majority from all camps,
right,
I don't see them believing na may credibility to talk about corruption, to even be the one to be the voice against corruption when she herself is tainted, very tainted.
So I think definitely VP Sara has taken strong hits as well, no. So ako I remember clearly yung the recent Numero survey na sila yung nagpauso to ask, are you pro Marcos, pro Duterte, pro opposition, right? And then I think while Duterte fell from like 40s to like 28, that's a big fall, no. Konti lang yung pagtaas ng opposition, and then tumaas din ng konti yung Marcos. The undecided sort of is what benefited the most from Sara Duterte's fall, right? So definitely I think if we look at where we are now compared to 2022, no, President Marcos I think definitely is in a worse position given his popularity. Vice President Duterte, she's the VP Sara, she's the I think still the strongest candidate if you look at polling going into 2028. But her position, I think, is weakened because her dad is in the ICC.
Yes.
And yun, she's facing a lot of very credible issues of corruption against her as well. Who's the only force that got stronger? The Democratic opposition. Because we went from 1 senator to 3. We have 3 seats for Akbayan. We have Mamamayang Liberal in there. And we have a bunch of other progressive forces in the lower house, right? So, yun. So I think we kind of showed up in 2025.
Yes, exactly.
But after 9 years in kind of wilderness, wala kaming out of power, right? People need to figure out, okay, sino ba kayo, right? And that's what I mean by that's what establishing credibility looks like, right? We're not Marcos, we're not Duterte. We're consistent about anti-corruption. We're consistent but we stand firm in our principles. No, we're credible in that we're not gonna give up also yung commitment natin to human rights and democracy just because Duterte happens to be popular in certain circles. Right? So that's, I think, what credibility looks like. Who are we?
Okay, so in that sense, nabanggit mo nga na, people that the people are now becoming more undecided. That's fertile ground to be able to shape minds. And I think the youth is a big portion of that. In 2028, mas maraming mga kabataan natin ay mag-uumpisa ng bumoto. 'Di ba? This year may mga bagong 'yan, may mga bagong papasok sa mga botante, and then next year leading up to 2028. So ang labanan ngayon is for the minds of the youth. Yun yung nakakatakot because of social media naman. That battle is being won to a certain extent by the trolls with the Duterte side kasi sila yung una nag-capitalize ng social media, troll armies, and spreading disinformation. Ano yung ginagawa ng mga Democratic opposition to be able to fight the disinformation, to be able to fight the fake news, to be able to help the youth and even yung mga madlang people natin na para maintindihan nila na itong tamang impormasyon, itong katotohanan, hindi ito ang propaganda at fake news. Tatlo yan BBM is propaganda, Duterte is fake news or misinformation or disinformation, and then you have the truth. That people are trying to wade through this information. Ang dami nun. Which one and how do we navigate through this that the Democratic and the true opposition will be able to share that truth.
Right. So I think I'm not the best person to talk about social media. If you look at my social media, I have a personal Facebook page that I post in maybe once a week. So parang and people are annoyed with me na I don't share things that I'm supposed to be sharing, whatever. I'm really bad at it.
Okay.
part of me doesn't want to become good at it. But the way I think about it is, the interesting case I think this last 2025 was si Senator Kiko Pangilinan.
Yes.
Really the butt of so many attacks as far as misinformation is concerned. But what happened? He held together the 2022 coalition of Leni Robredo, right? His vote was around the same number of votes. I forget percentage a little lower, but like in terms of like raw number of votes, around the same number of votes of VP Leni. And strangely, despite like the surveys predicting differently, which to me is also something that we really need to unpack and figure out, right? But my kutob, since it's not scientific, right? It's just my feeling as far as that's concerned is, I feel like we got to the step as far as our social media environment is concerned, na talagang the echo chambers have really high walls around them now.
Yes.
Right? Our echo chamber, the Duterte echo chamber has very high walls around it. It's hard to penetrate it with anything. But I think our echo chamber as well has kind of built those walls as well. That the propaganda of the Duterte, at least the ones directed to Senator Kiko, didn't really sink as far as his voters are concerned, right? So in that sense, we have some guards up. Although I would say that it's still a very scary time for misinformation because whereas before, na magkakasama yung unity team, pag may sinabi kang maganda about Marcos, syempre hindi tayo maniniwala. Pag may sinabi kayong maganda about Duterte, hindi tayo maniniwala. But in a situation where Duterte is saying all of the bad things about Marcos is saying all of the bad things about Duterte, ako maniniwala ko siya sa lahat, diba? Which makes me such a vulnerable target to misinformation now.
Right.
No? So on the one hand, I think that it's complicated, right? So on the one hand, in terms of defending our guys, like, I think misinformation against, say, Senator Bam, or Tito Bam, Senator Kiko, Senator Risa, I think that will have a hard time sticking.
Yeah, okay.
And even when criticism comes from our own camp, diba? Kasi sometimes that happens. But it didn't really affect anyone's approval, right? So that doesn't stick. But I think the very scary thing now is, there will be, halimbawa, si Zaldico, for instance, no? Parang, if you look at the content of what he says, kaduda-duda talaga. Pero ako parang, pag sinabi mo sa akin na magdanakaw si Marcos, maniniwala ako agad eh. Kahit walang evidence. Or, to the point na, kung sinabi mo, for example, something fantastical, like pinatay ni Marcos si Pope Francis or something, maniniwala ako kasi Marcos siya, di ba? But that's what makes this time so scary for misinformation. Now, I've said this is a problem. I have no idea how to deal with that bigger problem, except to say that as far as we ourselves are concerned, it becomes really important to question what we're reading. And so ako, that I'm so biased against Marcos, I still have to consciously question itong kay Zaldico. Okay, fine. Does it make sense? And ako, I don't even trust myself to make that judgment because I'm so upset with Marcos. So therefore, my belief is the least you can do, President Marcos, is ensure his safe return. If he's worried about his safety, then you need to take it upon yourself to bring him home and get him to testify properly.
So there are two things that you mentioned that was interesting para sa akin. Number one, yung inaamin mo rin at least na, and you're aware of the fact na may biases ka nga, na deep-seated biases. Yeah. So that's one. The other one is when you talked about the disinformation and how do you get people to shift the undecided. How do you shift them? Actually, you know what's happening right now is the opposition, without doing anything, is shifting the people, the undecided, towards the opposition by the fact that the Dutertes and the Marcoses are destroying each other's credibility. Paninira ng Duterte sa Marcos will erode that base. Paninira ng mga Marcos sa Duterte will also erode that base, which is why the undecided are starting to shift. And the reason they're undecided is because nga sinira ng Duterte ang pangalan ng Liberal Party, 'di ba? ng mga Aquino, to the point na hindi sila makapunta doon. So now they shift to the middle ground. Now that's the fertile ground pa rin in that case. But it's the siraan ng dalawa. Now I don't trust these two, pero to wala namang sinasabi, wala namang nagagawa. At nakikita naman natin wala naman talagang makikitang korupsyon dito sa demokratikong opposition, yung tunay na opposition. So I think slowly that shift, although sabihin nating undecided at nasa gitna yan, ay dahan-dahan pumapanig na yan sa tamang pananaw. Sa tamang grupo. Parang ganun. Kasi ang kailangan tignan ng mga nanonood ngayon ay hindi to about camps. This is about the Philippines. Pero pag tinignan mo talaga, sino ba tingin mo ang best para sa ating bansa? Dun ka pumili. And yun ang palagi ko sinasabi sa mga taong nagtataka o sino ba pipiliin ko, anong kampo. Hindi to kampo, Pilipinas. At kung sino yung pinakamalapit at tumugma sa ating konstitusyon, na ipaglalaban ng konstitusyon at kung ano ba ang ating bansa, yun ang dapat puntahan natin. At makikita mo naman, it's so obvious. It baffles my mind why parang ang hirap makita ng tao kung sino ang corrupt, kung sinong hindi, sinong gumagawa ng bagay para sa kanilang sariling interes at hindi. How is that so difficult? I mean, I wonder why people can't seem to assess yung corrupt sa hindi sa corrupt.
Well, I think parang I felt na, so executive director of the Ninoy Aquino Foundation, yung mandate is to preserve, or I forget what the verb is actually, pero take care of the legacy of Ninoy Pinoy. And definitely may mga katunggali ka sa layunin na yun, di ba? Syempre, nandiyan yung Marcos because of that long story as far as people power is concerned. Nandiyan yung Duterte because of all of the recent not just the demolition to the name, but demolition to the idea of yung pinaglaban natin ng panahon ng people power na hindi ka pwede magpatay ng basta-basta kung gobyerno ka, 'di ba? Parang pumatay ng basta-basta kung gobyerno ka. That's he eroded that norm to the point that parang people are happy to, like, there's a certain chunk of the population that welcomes stuff like that, 'di ba? Pero tingin ko yung kalaban ko sa trabaho ko is the idea na pare-pareho lang silang lahat. Right? That to me is the most damaging thing, right? And we see what the damage looks like. Kasi ako, nung nangangampanya ako for VP Lenny in 2022, right? Pag nag-house sa house ka, those were the most frustrating conversations. Diba? Na parang, okay, parang you'd have one or two na talagang okay, fine. Maybe not the most frustrating. Kasi syempre, pag binubuga sa'yo yung misinformation about propping up Marcos and Duterte and then pulling down like genuinely good people. Talagang nakakainis yun, aminin ko naman. Pero the more worrisome conversations were, pare-pareho naman silang lahat eh. Right? And so, I might as well vote for this person na at least may sobre ako dito. Diba? So, I think that's why I think that's why I care so much about credibility. Diba? Kasi parang we need to show na hindi tayo pare-pareho. There is a difference between the democratic opposition na tama, walang bahid ng corruption despite everything they try to throw at us. And there's a difference between us and the Duterte camp na yun, parang, again, yung modo sa DPWH, ginawa nila, and yung pondo na kinurakot nila, we say a lot corruption kills right now, and yes, floods kill too, but corruption directly kills them kasi when it pays for EJKs and all of the things that the Dutertes did. So we're different from that, but we're also different from Marcos because, again, parang regardless of what he's doing now, what did he aided and abetted what the Dutertes did for so many years, diba? So I think it's important that's what we mean, no? Parang kung ang kalaban natin ay pare-pareho silang lahat, we need to show that we're credible, we are different, diba? And I think and again, how to do that, I think there are many different ideas about it, but I think beyond the arithmetic of politics, I hope that's something that people consider as well. Kasi, sorry, to nerd out a little bit, no? One of the arguments kasi of how Donald Trump won the first time in 2016. The second time needs a lot of unpacking. But the first time, one of the arguments why he won was, yun nga, parang Clinton seemed like the more moderate candidate, but yun, parang ang daming bahid, ang daming questions about them. Trump, by saying things that are upsetting and by being an outsider, he was able to establish more credibility than Clinton kasi Clinton had the email scandal and whatever. So Trump as an outsider and not as someone who was trying to, he did bring some people in, but not as someone who was consciously about, I don't want to upset this group, I don't want to upset this group, I don't want to upset this group, which is the traditional way of thinking about politics. He was able to win by pissing off a significant chunk of the population.
Right.
And strangely, ironically, that established in a way his credibility. Kasi I'm willing to piss off this group. I'm willing to sacrifice their votes because I don't think he actually believes in what he's saying, right? But the signal that sends to some people is, I'm willing to piss them off because I believe in what I'm saying. Right? So, and again, this is a bit more of it's not the mainstream way of thinking about elections, right? But I think it's something, given how much things changed in the last 10 years, I think it's something that we need to think about. No? Parang credibility is a really important thing. And the ways to establish it sometimes are counterintuitive. But yun, I hope, again, that's something to consider at least alongside the big tent sort of practice of politics.
Okay. So let's talk about naman yung upcoming rally on November 30. So you guys did the first one already. How was that for you? And now moving towards the November 30 rally naman. Anong mga gagawin natin dito? Bakit ba dapat pumunta ang taong bayan dito sa rally na to sa November 30?
Sige, yung how was that for you, baka matagalan ako sa pagsasagot nun. Kasi that was the longest 10 days of my life.
Oh,
kasi,
wow.
And literal na yung unang meeting to organize it, 11 days, fine. So yung unang meeting to organize it was September 10. Yun yung unang meeting. And then we pulled it off September 21. So that's 11 days of organizing and then the day itself. So the longest 12 days of my life. Pero yun, what are we doing now? So definitely we've had a bigger lead time coming in. And I think even in the beginning, parang the Catholic, different religious groups, but parang convened by the Catholic Church, I think, played a big role in organizing September 21. And I think they're more, the commitment to the project has only gotten bigger. No? We're working a lot with Caritas Philippines now to, as far as the logistics are concerned, as far as getting in touch with more people to come in. So we're definitely expecting, and we're working towards, and we're expecting like a bigger crowd this November 30. And especially given nga that, ayun, since September 21, parang ikulong na yung mga kurakot yung chant and we haven't seen anything to that effect yet.
You're right.
So the only sensible thing, the sensible thing to do is, I guess we have to shout louder, right? And I guess we have to be a bigger group so people can, we see some more urgency in this endeavor, no? So we're still setting up for People Power Monument. That's that's where we will be. I'm not sure what People Power Monument will look like after this week, but like hopefully I'm pretty sure it'll still be in perfectly good condition to work with. And then we're a lot of the work right now is we're finalizing the program, who gets to talk. I think we're planning for a longer program for the day because a lot of people have expressed interest that they want to join, from artists to different activist groups, no. And I think over the next couple of days, we'll be ready to make some announcements as far as the media is concerned. I think maybe second half of this week, we'll have something a bit more concrete to announce by then.
So you mentioned the People Power Monument. What about the EDSA Shrine? Kasi yung nangyari the last time, yun yung isa kong napansin. Number one, EDSA Shrine, walang parang set stage, walang central focal point. Ang nangyari doon, everyone was trying to get everyone's attention. And that includes the ones that infiltrated it with their own agenda.
Absolutely.
Then you have the People Power Monument where your stage ay nakaharap sa may White Plains na lahat ng mga naglalakad, ang komento nila was hindi nila alam nasan yung entablado at napunta sila dun sa
gate 4 ng Aguinaldo with the
yun,
DDS,
tapos akala nila, yung nagtataka sila, ano nangyayari dito? Ano sinisigaw ng mga to na nakaitim? Nang gugulo. So, ano yung magagawa natin ngayon na pagbabago para siguraduhin na maintindihan ng tao kung ano ba ang panawagan natin at sino ba ang in charge dito?
Sige. So, una, mea culpa talaga yun. Kasi yung original plan for the flow of people dun sa September 21 ay, ang gusto sana namin, yung buong length ng White Plains yung pupunuin. Diba? So we set up LEDs along White Plains, and the idea was pagpasok ng mga tao from EDSA, parang U-turn,
flow
para umabot sa stage, diba? Pero syempre human nature, kapag nakita mo yung stage, hindi ka nagagalaw, diba? So I think we're now setting up for syempre a lot of talks with the MMDA to figure out what's feasible given EDSA is still the main thoroughfare. But we're setting up for a situation na ayun, parang knowing full well that that's the crowd dynamic. One option is parang EDSA na talaga yung crowd, and then the stage will either be EDSA facing or parang yung maliit lang yung likod niya. So parang so may surround or like one LED on one side and then stage on the other side. So like there's something for everyone out there. But still, we're still figuring out how to operationalize that, but it's definitely a prime consideration. And then I think the other half is, parang who's taking the lead. Again, from before until now, I think we've been led by different religious groups, and prominent there's the Catholic Church, diba? I think Cardinal Ambo David has made a lot of statements about the current situation, right? And part of that is to be the CBCP has made statements, parang to be circumspect about who is making the calls, who has been consistent, who has been credible as far as the corruption issue is concerned. And we're grateful for that leadership, not just because it's again the CBCP is consistent about anti-corruption, non-violence, and I think that was a very important aspect of September 21, that we're aware that a lot of people will be coming to the rallies for the first time, diba? So syempre we want to take care of them as well. And going forward, we take a lot of cues from. We're grateful for that leadership, and we're working with that forward. So I think the groups here are parang definitely a lot of us in the democratic opposition are there, but a lot of religious groups are also involved, and I think we've demonstrated. I think we figured out how to work together quite well nung September 21 at tuloy-tuloy yun hanggang November 30.
Okay, so ano bang panawagan ngayon on November 30? Is it still the same? Ngayon na may bagong lumabas na alegasyon nga tungkol kay BBM. Is it BBM resign now? Is it BBM and Sara resign? Or no, we are just against corruption? Pero ano ba yung ating clear message dito? Kasi I'm sure people are confused and they want a clear messaging. Ano tingin mo to?
Okay, so I think we're still diba? We're still talking media-wise, but I think we've kind of coalesced around the main calls are ilantad, ibalik, ikulong, right? So ilantad is the general call for transparency. So all of our reforms as far as the ICI is concerned. And I think very strongly that means the independence of the ICI from President Marcos, given na nga na, okay, credible or not yung kay Zaldico, may ganitong issue na nga. So President Marcos has to do sort of significant steps to recuse himself and yun, again, establish the credibility of the government as far as anti-corruption is concerned. So ilantad, so reveal everything. We want the ICI to be given teeth, so yung contempt powers bukod sa independence, sa contempt powers para hindi na maulit yung ginawa ng mga diskaya na parang di ko na participate, right? So contempt powers. Ibalik is, I think, taking cues from I heard this from Kong Chel-Diokno, diba? That his point was we can file civil cases for forfeiture, right? So we don't have to wait to jail the politicians to reclaim a lot of the ill-gotten wealth, right? So ilantad, ibalik, and then ultimately ikulong, right? So we want the cases to be filed, and again, yung ikulong, that's the hindi kami yung gumawa nun, di ba? Parang taong bayan yung gumawa nun, di ba? Yung ikulong niya yung mga kurakot that emerged organically, like despite all of us butting heads to figure out what is the right call, people figured that out on their own, right? So hindi namin yan binibitawan. So I think those are the three themes that we want to talk about. But in terms of the specific situation, definitely I think what we've come together, and again the situation is evolving. No, may mga ilang editions pa si Zaldico ata na lalabas na I don't know what they'll look like, but we're still definitely we're keeping an eye out on that. But as far as the Marcos administration is concerned, I think very important that the safe return of Zaldico is guaranteed, so that his testimony, regardless of parang the dubious content, the testimony can be given due course. And so we need to guarantee his safe return, and President Marcos needs to recuse himself. No? So it cannot be that the ICI continues to serve at his pleasure. There needs to be like genuine independence as far as that's concerned. And then on the part of Duterte, I think it's very important that the members of his administration during his time, especially former DPWH Secretary Mark Villar, explains publicly, and not just behind the closed session of the ICI, ano ba talaga yung nangyari? Bakit lumobo ng todo-todo yung budget ng flood control noong 2021, right? And yun, like what went on there, no? So we can't it's very important to us na wala tayong amnesia, no? Porque yung sitting administration ngayon, the flood control was really bad during their time. We can't forget 2016 to 2022 either, especially if all of this started in at least nung 2021, right? So I think we want transparency from the Duterte camp as well. And ako, sisingit ko na to personally since we started with impeachment, right? We are not forgetting the confidential funds of Sara Duterte, di ba? Because parang kung sabihin nyo man na 625 million pa rin yan, ilang classrooms pa rin yan, di ba? Ilang laptops pa rin yan, di ba? And there's such credible documentary evidence that is really problematic. So is that definitely the sitting government has parang the buck stops there, right? At least in terms of accountability for the current corruption, definitely Marcos is in the center. But is what's being offered by the Duterte camp as an alternative desirable, better, credible? I don't think so. Right? And we're going to make that case very clearly in this in the November 30 rally.
Okay, so I guess I'll give you this chance, Kiko, to invite everyone to attend the November 30 rally. Go ahead. That's your camera right there on top. That one.
Well, so I think kita niyo po, no? So from July na binaha yung Pilipinas, binabaha pa rin tayo ng madalas until today, wala pa tayong nakikitang nakukulong. And yung nakakalungkot pa nga yung mga politiko natin, imbis na parang nagiging leader sila, nag-uunahan sila na to take advantage dito sa galit natin, na kung ano-anong agenda yung tinutulak, yung Marcos administration parang naghuhugas kamay, yung Duterte faction ay parang pinipresenta nila yung sarili nila kahit sila yung nagpasimuna ng corruption na ito. So kung galit kayo, kung nakikita ko nyo yung galit na yun, yung dahil sa flood, yung galit natin sa baha, yung galit natin sa ating mga leader na inuuna yung pansariling interes kaysa sa kapakanan ng bayan, magsama-sama po tayo sa November 30, September 21 na muntiking sabihin ko. So November 30, People Power Monument, nandyan po tayo mula alas 8 ng umaga, may mga tao na magpupulong-pulong doon, pero siguro I think our formal program, the current draft, it'll start around 9 a.m. No? So 9 a.m. so early in the morning, and then we'll be there Currently 2 p.m. ang nakasulat, pero bakit magtagal pa kasi we're getting so many there's so much interest from different performers, different activist organizations who want to come together and use the platform. So we'll be there for most of the day. Get ready for a long day, no? Siguro bukod sa paghandaan natin ulan man o araw, paghandaan din natin na let's bring water, bring food, because it's going to be a longer program, and we're trying to make sure that there are vendors in the area, but in case kokonti lang yan, or in case that doesn't push through, get ready to be parang picnic ata yung magiging effect nito. And then siguro the traditional reminders ng QCLGU, single-use plastics are banned in Quezon City, so bring water bottles para sa mga drinks po natin. And then if you're bringing bags, as much as possible, the bags should be transparent para madali sa security natin to see na wala tayong parang tinatago na dangerous items, no? So, but again, I think from September 21 to now, the organizers talagang alam namin na maraming mga pamilya, maraming mga tao, maraming kabataan yung dadalo dito for the first time na never pang nakipag-rally. In fact, I was with a group earlier yesterday na parang kinukwento nila na yung ama pumunta ng September 21 pero di mo na sinama yung pamilya kasi feeling out pa lang. Pero ngayon, sa sitwasyon na nga parang hindi, lahat na tayo pupunta, right? So we're very aware na marami yung dadalo for the first time, and at least on the end of the organizers of the Trillion Peso March, that is just as much as expressing our anger. Yung security ng mga dadalo doon is of paramount concern as well. And again, we're grateful for the leadership of the Catholic Church na consistent yung paninindigan nila na oo laban sa korupsyon, pero sang-ayon alang-alang sa 87 Constitution, through active nonviolence and through through the means that won us our freedom in 86. We will use the same means to defend our Constitution to make sure that we see genuine change as far as corruption is concerned.
Ayun. Okay, guys. And with that, salamat sa inyong lahat. And I'm really excited to see what will happen. I really hope na somehow marinig na ating mga liderato sa gobyerno yung ating panawagan, yung panawagan ng taong bayan. And Kiko, salamat sa panahon mo. And I wish you the best of luck, not just for you, but also for our country.
Yes. Salamat.
Sige. Salamat,
Thank you, Chris.
Okay. Ingat sa inyo lahat. And if nagugustuhan mo yung mga ganitong klaseng content, please make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. At I have a paid membership kasi yun ang problema pag hindi ka bayad
Totoo.
Oo, okay. Ito na nga ginagawa ko araw-araw. If you guys want to support my advocacy, please make sure to be a paid member to this channel. At sa mga comments nyo, whether you agree with Kiko or not, if you have any questions, please write it all in the comment section below. Salamat sa inyo lahat. This is Chris Tan on behalf of Kiko Dee. Magkita tayo muli.